there was a reason I wanted them to sit separately, because I just discovered before I entering this room that they both are married to each other. So jitna ek wo thoda sa distance create kare, I think Ashish will thank me for this. So it's so nice to see the audience engaging. I mean, the interaction that I was seeing in the earlier panel. It feels good to be sitting here to moderate a panel which is going to be heard by an audience which is actually interested in the conversation. So I will not waste time in introducing all of you. One, I think most people know of you. Second is the introduction has already happened. But Ashish, let me begin my conversation with you. You have been an advisor to government. You have been a strategist and advisor at ENY, and then you got into entrepreneurship and you became an advisor to your dad, and turned the business into what we see as a brand today. Was there a strategy that you had while you were kickstarting this venture in the manner that you do it now, or did it just evolve after you came into the business?
I think it was a very evolving journey. Simply because that the market around us, I mean, if we see 10 years back, 5 years back, 3 years back, right? The market itself is evolving, how the customers are buying, their buying patterns. Of course, COVID has completely led to a behavior change in the short run, which we see signs of in the long term as well. I joined the business actually right before the first lockdown and COVID happened. And that's when I quit my job and took that plunge, without knowing what COVID will bring to the table. But if I look back at my journey, I wouldn't have done it any other way. It's an evolving journey. Currently, as we also as a brand stand and how we or I also operate is a very evolving process. We take every day as it comes, but never sort of lose sight of the bigger picture of what you want to achieve as a brand and what your customers want to experience from your brand. So I think it's an evolving journey. That's how we looked at it in the past. That's how we look at it even now. Yeah.
Did you have a picture in your mind, a vision, before you chose to give up your corporate life and join your dad's business?
So, see, fundamentally, the brand, so to say, or back in the day when we were starting this business, fundamentally, the foundation of why we started, the ethos of why we started remains the same. The idea was to make the best notebooks and stationery that your money can buy, immaterial of where you're based in the world, right? So back in the day, just to exemplify this a little bit, we used to, as a family, when we used to travel abroad, we used to buy a lot of stationery. I mean, the best stationery available in the world comes from Europe. Largely because if you see the supply chain, there are certain mills and paper mills that date back to the 1400s, 1200. Those kind of sort of ethos is there. So when we used to come back, you're like, this is some great products available out there, aesthetically very well. You'll really enjoy using those products. I said, why can't you make this in India? Like, what stops you to make this in India? So, as a family, we jumped on that journey where, we said, okay, we'll make the best notebooks your money can buy. And that ethos continues as of today. We continue to push the limits of product, of innovation. We run our own manufacturing. So, the ethos, since it remains the same, I think nothing much has changed. But yes, the bigger picture is always at the back of our mind. We build for that.
Aditi, you've been a designer, you've been a graphic designer, and from designing for companies, you went on to create your own products. And the segment that you are focusing on can be termed as a luxury segment because of the pricing, the positioning, etc. Now, when it comes, he's doing, premium mass product to a luxury niche product. How did you choose this? And what were the challenges that you faced while creating a brand, which is going to be a niche brand? And how did you overcome those challenges?
So I think, I mean, if you ask me why I started Indus People, it's basically because I, as a graphic designer, like I have a very, very minimal aesthetic. That's my aesthetic. But I just felt that, at that time, say 5.5, 6 years back, the kind of ceramics that we were getting in the country were all like printed or hand painted or something. Nothing that, I would want to buy and use at home myself. So I just felt that there was a gap in the market for like this minimal modern products, but I always wanted to like stick to an India story. And also we decided to keep that as a backstory in the products. Now, coming from a branding background, what I realized is that, when you're creating a company versus when you're building a brand, it's, I think, two different things. I mean, in today's day and age, I think brand is way more important than anything else. When you're doing digital marketing or you're doing any form of posts or storytelling, you are actually creating a brand. Now, I was creating this for other people. So for me, it was very, in that aspect, creating a luxury brand was a little easier for me because I had done that in the past. So it's about the kind of imagery that you portray or the kind of storytelling that you're doing or the way your website is designed and stuff. I think all of that helps in sort of positioning your brand as a luxury product. Even the way you photograph it, stuff like that. Very, very small things, but it's about how the customer perceives it at the end of the day. So even if you're putting a certain price point to it, they're willing to pay that price point because they're landing on your page and they're seeing, oh, this is a luxury product at the end of the day. Now, the challenge, so branding wasn't the challenge that I faced because I was already hopefully good at that. But the challenge that I faced was that, you can basically get somebody to buy your product once. You have to get them to buy it again and again by giving them a good quality product. Branding sells it only once. So getting the right quality was actually a challenge that I faced because we've named our brand Indus People, which means Indian. The word Indian comes from people of the Indus. So I had decided that no matter what happens, I'm going to make in India. Now, making in India comes with its own challenges. So I think getting the right quality and the right finish in the product was the biggest challenge that I faced, that I can justify the price point that I'm putting to it.
I totally agree with you, Aditi, because, like you said, branding can do that magic once, but the quality has to play the role because, at the end of the day, brand is just creating a promise of what to expect when people were to engage with you. Ankit, what has been your experience, with creating a D2C brand? And maybe you'd want to share because you came in late. So maybe you can just give a small intro about what you do and share your experience of creating a D2C brand.
Thank you. So basically, creating a D2C brand, I think there are so many experts today in India on that, but my journey was a little different. So I started off by being a distributor for D2C brands to now creating my own D2C brand. So the journey was very different. So I had the benefit of learning and unlearning from some of the best global brands. I don't know how many of you have heard of a brand called Olaplex. It's a hair product. So we were the ones who launched that 8 years ago in India, and that company was a 3 SKU product company, and it sold for about over $1.3 billion within 3 years of existence globally to private equity. And we were part of that journey of building it from scratch in India, and also across a channel which is very untapped, which is the salon channel. So we kind of, over the last 14 years as a company, have mastered the art of working with salons, hairdressers, and that fraternity, which is very different from your typical D2C. And then taking all those learnings and all those experiences, we're now launching our own hair care brand called 310X. And that journey has been incredible. It's taken us about 4 years to kind of curate the right product, to test it from an Indian hair standpoint. Because today when we import international brands like Olaplex or Kevin Murphy, which is another brand that we do from Australia, it's a hair, men's styling and care brand, you get what they've created for the global market. And then you actually pay not just for the cost of the product, but for their global positioning. But we wanted to kind of give to India the same quality, which is why we say 310X, 3X, which is 3X the performance, 10 benefits, but at the price that the Indian consumer would want to pay. So we've kind of managed to now do that and bring the product, which is now going live as we speak. And yes, and that's the journey so far. So I'm still trying to catch up with you guys right now. So.
And, from the perspective of D2C branding, you said you had a lot of learning as well as you had to do a lot of unlearning. What was the one thing that you feel you are now doing it differently from your experience of distributing some of the best products?
Very good question. So right now what we've done is, we said, okay, what were the good things that worked for them, right? The good things that worked for them were, I think, without doubt, as our friend here also mentioned, that quality is key, right? You have to have immunity on product. So you cannot be a great packaging, but average quality, or a great price, but average quality. You need to have product immunity, which means if any of you use that product, you need to come back craving for it. So that is what I took from them. I think Olaplex is tried and tested. Everybody knows product performs. And then I took what the Indian, and what I kind of did not take from them was some of the ingredients that didn't work for Indian hair, and took the ingredients that worked for Indian hair. And, in India, we've got a very humid climate. So we need, more frizz control. We need more, softness in the hair, which is also something that all Indian women and men to some extent prefer. So we looked at what were some of the vegan ingredients that could deliver that. And also considering that we have thicker, coarser hair. So we looked at those. So those are some of the changes we tweaked in the model. And then, social media is big everywhere, I guess. But we are going to be doing a mix of not just social media, but a lot of real people, real results kind of campaigns to really drive that word of mouth. It's going to be a slightly longer journey, but I'm safely assuming we'll be able to achieve it with the network we've built across the last 14 years.
So what I hear you say is that listen to your customer and take it seriously and innovate your delivery, product development, etc. based on what your customers want and not on the whims and fancies of what you think the customer wants. Right?
Correct.
Gurleen, let me come to you. Gurleen, you've been selling a product which was a B2B product. You were servicing the hotels, resorts, etc. And then you created a D2C product, right? How is your messaging, branding, brand connect different when it comes to creating a product for a business where you could be white labeling and to now change the mindset of creating a connect with that individual who will be paying money from his wallet to buy your product? Second is, while you're answering this, I would also try to understand from your journey that when you're selling to a hotel, creating a big brand which has a connect with an individual help you better create a distribution? Would a hotel want, we were talking about when you go to a Ritz-Carlton, they have large brands whose products are being kept as toiletries, right? What works better in terms of positioning? So tell us about your B2B experience as well as your D2C experience.
Okay, so hello everyone. For your first question, which was like, how do we enter from B2B and B2C with a different brand where we are private label for one and then we go into market with our own brand? We were slightly different when we started our B2B. We were very strong on bringing in our own brand. I clearly remember we started with a brand called Ignis, which is one of the best brands we have created. It's completely used by Marriott. What worked for us was that we kept the collections exclusive to the hotels, to the group of hotels. So like Ignis, if it was used in Marriott, we were not using for another. Then there were Hyatts. We created June Jacobs Sporting for Hyatt, and that's an international brand. So we got a mix of both for us, which created a success story. We were not having initial plans to be into retail or D2C, but we got a great feedback from customer. They were fantastically loving our products. We never thought that, Kimerica can be India's bath and body brand, you know, and it's a sensational brand. We work more of on a self-care experience where, you know, a person spends most of the alone time with himself when, you know, they're having a shower. And that's all the experience we try to create around. So yes, positioning and marketing is also different a bit, because convincing a B2B customer it's very price sensitive. Our ideology when we were into B2B versus B2C, every day it's a shift, because one, if you are talking about B2B and then second hour of the day you are talking about B2C, the whole strategy changes. And convincing people, you know, with our products, we have a very good feedback that the product packaging, the look and feel, the usage, we are very fragrance driven brand, and it gives us a very good connect that people recognize it as an international brand, which is a very big compliment altogether. So we, you know, kind of have a seamless integration that, and even at our stores you will find good international brands as well as a presence, because we always treat them as friends around the world. That's how, you know, we have used and collaborated both the brands, be it our own brand or the private label brands. So we do have 35 plus licenses of international brands, with the expertise of having retail in the presence and, you know, having B2B. We always used to say that when we are sending our products in hotels, that's a free marketing actually, which we quite leverage a lot. People recollect and recall our brand very quickly. Oh yes, we have seen you in hotels, and why don't you serve on a retail basis? So that was how B2C was all started. So it was a great channel for us, which not all have the privilege, but yes, we had to reach so many users at a go. So yeah.
Gulin, I'm very keen to ask you one thing. When you're creating a brand which has a prestige,
Yeah.
right? There's a connection that you create.
Yes.
And like you said, people, you want to sample it also there, and then people recollect the brand.
Yes.
Have there been some instances in some hotels where you say that, you know, listen, I do not want to put my brand there. I would rather white label it and keep it there, but I don't want to lose the business.
That comes when, you know, you are doing when you need volumes different from others. So that was one thing that, okay, let the business go. But fortunately, we have a great business in the hospitality as well. We're India's first. So yes, that's
Awesome. So would it be correct to believe that for a D2C, brand is one of the most important things that an entrepreneur must keep in mind? Is it safe to believe that?
it's a mixed thing, because D2C comes with a lot of challenges, which is typically not there in B2B. But yes, the kind of recognition which you get from D2C, it helps a lot when, you know. So for example, if now we go to a hotel and you want to pitch, for example, to any luxury hotel, or Kimerica versus, you know, any other XYZ private label brand, their generally top question is, do you have a store? And now we can proudly say that, yes, we have 7 stores already. And you can see our stores, and when they personally, so how the process works for B2B is they do go to the store, they see the brand, they do come and see the manufacturing facility. So all of those are top notch, where we have not compromised on anything on the quality and the appearance. It's all luxury, contemporary built stores. So definitely it gives a big advantage that, you know, you are already into D2C.
You know, it's beautiful because, you know, if you come and see, there's a, like Aditi also mentioned, that the quality is absolutely paramount when you're building a luxurious brand. But quality helps you create that connect with the customer, but then also brings a lot of responsibility on the brand owner to ensure consistency over time. You know, there's a huge responsibility that comes in. You know, Ashish, I want to come to you because I remember talking to you about what you do in the B2B space. I want you to explain to the audience how building a D2C brand has helped you get B2B business, and how you are ensuring your brand is present while you're doing a B2B business.
So how we look at this is, one, we're not plainly a D2C brand, right? We call ourselves an omni-channel brand. I mean, just for the audience, I think people who don't know about us or how we operate, we of course have an online presence of our own. We are in multiple marketplaces. we're in about 600-700 retail stores and now expanded into multiple countries as well, right? So as a brand, I think in this sort of phygital world that you live in currently, how we see this is that people are experiencing some element of what you've created in different formats. So if they're on Amazon, they're experiencing the pictures or the content or the videos that you've put on. Same for your D2C sort of website and all of that. So that plays a big sort of role. Now, simple things on how this is connected, like if we're doing any sort of online advertising with Meta, for example, and you're a resident of Gurgaon, you're going from place A to, or your house to, say, Ambience Mall, for example. While scrolling on social media, and if you are an interest group that we're targeting, you'll probably see our advertising, right? You may not buy it, but you'll experience some sort of the brand that we try to portray on that particular platform. You get off an Ambience Mall, you go up to a Crossword store, you'll see the brand there. You're far easier to convert, right? Of course, you'll see, look, feel the product. And what rightly Aditi also said, branding will only let you buy the product once. If the experience is not good, one, you'll never be able to create a brand. Second, you'll never be able to get the customer back, both interconnected. In our and to your question, how we built our customization business, I mean, you'll be surprised to know that we have 0 people on our sales team, but we work with 2,000 companies. And all of this is a pull marketing. We don't reach out to anyone. They have reached out to us. Why? Because at the end of the day, they have used our products. They found it to be 10x better. And they've reached out back to us saying that, okay, why don't you customize the product for us? In this segment also, 99.95%, barring some white labels that we do, if you've heard of brands like Napa Dori, any notebook that you pick up is done by us. Nicobar, any notebook that you pick is done by us. So there are 2-3 brands like this that we white label for. But any other customized product that we do for these 2,000 companies that we work with will have our branding on it. And largely got converted because the CXO level or the senior management or the HR or the admin or the procurement is a user of the product or gotten gift of another branded product that we did for another brand and they got gifted. So I think it's all connected. I mean, so if you're doing some content online, you're marketing online, it's all kind of some returns in some of the channels that you're working in. And unfortunately enough, currently we don't have the matrices or the data is not kind of flowing in. If I did X number of or X spend on Meta, hence it converted into my corporate sales. So I don't have that number, but year on year we've seen that time and again kind of increase.
Ankit, you said you began your business being a distributor for products that are being sold to the salon. Every brand typically has a story that is told to a customer, But as a distributor for a foreign product where you represent that brand in the country, your customer is a business through which you're selling. Does the story get diluted with a sales objective when you're dealing with a business? The story that the brand has for the customer versus the story that you have to achieve your numbers going to the business.
No, I think the story is always the same because when you're representing a brand, and if you're a good distributor with the right ownership and accountability, you will represent them like it is your brand. Today we've been distributors, but we've always represented like then we were like it's our brand in India. And we are, let's say, for Olaplex, we are Olaplex India, right? We don't see it differently. So, and then, sales numbers will only come if the story is communicated to the end customer, consumer, because it's a story that counts, right? So let's say if the story of Olaplex was, it repairs the bonds of the hair. Now, repairs the bonds of the hair means nothing to the consumer because they don't know what bonds are. We all have hair, but we don't know that hair is made of bonds and how many bonds. But the story was insurance for your hair. That was a very strong story. It was insurance for your hair, and we kept repeating that to the consumer. I remember in the first few years when we launched Olaplex, people were saying, "Oh, is it Ola Cabs? Is it related to Ola Cabs?" And we had struggle, and it wasn't a product that gives you outer benefits; it gives you inner benefits. But over a period of time, I think every woman who colors her hair or styles her hair or blow dries or heat treats her hair knows that you cannot survive without that ingredient or that technology. So that insurance for your hair was the story, and that. So I'm sure all of us here have that own story, or we need to have that story if you want to really, crack the code with the Indian consumer and make it as simple as possible.
Aditi, you are a brand, you're not selling online per se, right? But in today's digital age, it is very difficult to believe that any brand will not have an online presence to create a connect with the user, right? How important is storytelling for you when you are wanting to create a connect with your user to acquire him as a customer and also retain? Because you just mentioned you can only sell it once based on the brand, but then the quality, the delivery, everything matters. How are you creating this connect? How are you using storytelling in the online world to acquire a customer and then be able to retain them and build a pride of owning a product, which has been from your store?
So we do actually sell online through our website and through other channels as well, through some aggregators and stuff. So we have that retail presence also. So the thing is that in terms of storytelling, I think not so much in the form of a story, but I think just highlighting as he mentioned rightly, that highlighting the key aspects or the USPs of your products. Like we started off as, our storytelling in the beginning when we started off as just a D2C brand was that it's all made in India, inspired by India stories and everything. But moving forward, we realized that's not enough. There are many other brands coming up doing the same thing, doing similar products and everything. So we had to so far evolve. Now, what we realized in the Indian market is that coffee as a market was booming in the country, and it is still growing, like very largely in terms of even the number of cafes coming up, or in terms of like, your D2C brands in coffee and stuff. The consumers are really going up for coffee. So we realized that we need to tap into that market of sorts. Now, you had cappuccino cups available, you had espresso cups available or mugs available online, but everyone was just taking a regular mug, putting a design on, slapping their design on it and selling it. No one really got into the science behind a good coffee cup and stuff like that. So that's when we realized that that is the gap in this expanding market. So we sort of tapped into that. Now, in terms of storytelling, what we did was we actually we studied the science behind a good coffee cup and stuff like that, and that's what we actually educated the customer about. So people who already knew about that, they were like, oh, this is a brand that's actually understanding my need, and therefore they came to us, whether it's a cafe or it is your end consumer. And for the others who were just getting into coffee, they're like, oh, so this is how a coffee cup is supposed to be. So then they were coming to us and purchasing the products from us. So I think in terms of that, whether we're getting our B2B market or we're getting like selling directly to D2C, I think this sort of communication of what we're doing in terms of the quality, in terms of creating the right product and stuff, I think because that was very clear, it sort of helped people create that trust in our brand, and knowing that what we're doing is not just slapping a design on a cup or something, we're actually creating a credible product for them to use.
That's beautiful, because a graphic designer turning into a product designer and understanding what the product needs to do as in terms of utility is amazing. Gurleen, from a B2B to B2C and setting up a store, so creating a front end, a company which is used to selling in mass is selling, did the numbers excite you when it came to the number of sales coming from a store, and a store that was being set up during the pandemic? So what did it feel like? One. Second is, I want to touch upon digital again with you. Having a physical store, a D2C brand, what are some of the strategies that you used in the online marketing to drive these sales and brand connect at the store level? Any success story or any strategy that you would want to share which could be useful to anyone who's starting up now?
Okay. So for the first part, I would say the brands
uh, the numbers are very different when it comes to a store.
Yeah, thank you so much. So initially, we opened the stores actually during COVID when everybody was shutting their stores. It was a very difficult and controversial discussion we used to have in office that should this is the right time when everybody is closing down the store. Why do you want to open up the store? And that too we took locations at airport, which was again a very difficult decision. But we were when we launched Kimerica for retail, we were very sure about our strategy that we will be doing it omni-channel because our focus was to create a premium luxury brand, and because of the likes of Rituals and Byredo, whom we get inspired by, we have seen them making a lot of stores because that's how with time you connect with the brand and retail in the brand. We were very sure that every time you open Instagram or every time you go through any digital platform, you will find another brand, which would be after you to buy the product. But we were sure that our all the marketing strategy will have to be on a pull basis and not on a very push basis. And that's how the products evolved around what people are looking for. Let's work around on that. So offline, yes, had been scary, and numbers as well, yes, that it is always, difficult to even achieve BP. But again, we were sure that luxury will need at least 5 to 7 years of time to seep into the market. Fortunately, out of our 7 stores, only 3 are there which are not doing BP, but rest of them are quite profitable. And we are happy because we planned smart stores. We even closed one store which we felt that, yes, we made a mistake. And yes, we were happy accepting that instead of, carrying away the losses. It was a good decision that's okay, let's close down the store. Whatever branding we had to do it, we had done with it. But moving more on a kind of store which, gives a success to us is definitely our focus. And even for the next 2 years, we are there with our stores in our plan that this year we will have some 5 to 10 stores of our own. And next year another 15-20. So offline, we are very confident that our brand is going to have that creation from offline to online, while the whole many of brands who are mass or mass premium working from online to offline, but we had the mixed strategy. And moving to the second question of digital marketing, where we have the success in digital marketing, not just Amazon and those, we are quite taken away with the quick commerce numbers. This has been fantastic growth for us. Brand, we never thought a person buying a 999 rupee shower gel on a quick commerce like Blinkit or Zepto, where the AOV is generally 500, 600. But we were quite happy to see the numbers, and plus the progress where we have done in the digital space. Our contribution to digital offline is still 70-30. So that's quite a significant of online which we do. But and then plus we have almost 100 shoppers, shopper stop, and then plus Nikon Trend, we are there. So with limited SKUs, our strategy has been that you go what works best for us. We have a lot of subcategories like bath and body is our category, skincare is our category. Gifting surprisingly has been a very big contributor to us, but has worked in a very positive manner that, trying someone to try a shower gel of 999 versus giving him a set of 5 where, he can experience all 5 products differently at a good price point of say 1350 or 1999. That has quite of worked wonders for us and giving accessibility to the people, to come and experience our brands. And plus in D2C and offline as well, our storytelling has been very strong in terms of our collection, because it's, as I mentioned, bath and body is something, I can't convince a lot basis the USP. Some are problem-oriented products which are already out there in the market. But when you talk about luxury or global brands, they are more of giving that experiential product, and to bring that person experiential, it's definitely important to have them better benefits at the store. So what our footfall from online to offline works is, offline we have better offers, better complementary products as a strategy, that whenever you are buying, you have an added experience. Plus a whole lot of experience. We have massage sessions at our store. You can feel our product. You can even, we have skincare testing products, serums you can take away at home. Try those. So all the benefits which we have thought to let customer experience our brand first and then become a user has been our success story.
Awesome. So before I ask my next set of questions to the panelists here, I want to invite some questions from the audience. Do you have some questions for the panelists sitting here? Anyone has any questions? सब कुछ समझ आ गया या सब कुछ समझ नहीं आया? दो ही चीजें हो सकती है, सर.
Asked with Mr. Ashish Batra, I know your brand for quite a long time. I've been working with corporates.
Can we ask these guys to not?
The biggest challenge in corporates was price. And how do you match that price, that ask from the corporates? Because budgets are tightening day by day, years on years. And it is very difficult to match. And I, being from a procurement background, I found it very difficult to pull in paperclip. So, what is the mantra now you have got, or you are finding yourself difficult to enter into corporates, whether it is big, small, whatever it is? I mean, everybody is running for cheaper brand, cheaper thing, and yours, I know it's a brand, but then how do you match the prices to enter into the corporates?
So, sir, first of all, thank you for recognizing the brand, and I'm guessing you're a user as well, so thank you for that. You see, we're very clear as a brand that we're not in the price floor game. See, if we fight the price war, then there is no limit to going down, right? And we as a brand actually play the game of quality and the service and the experience that you have while using the product. So while we have a lot of copy brands that have slashed the prices, there are multiple brands. There's a brand called Paper Club that's come. There's some other 2-3 brands that have come, also failed, right? Because when you try and fight the price game in any sector, immaterial or just stationery, you fight the price of any sort of price game in any sector, you're bound to reduce the quality of the product and eventually leading to a customer not enjoying it. So we, to be honest, don't want to acquire a customer who is very, taking a decision basis the price. We want to onboard a client basis the quality that we have to offer without any compromise on that. So if you see, what we sell in retail is what we sell to the corporates as well. In terms of the market, in terms of the corporates that we work with, as I was explaining, I don't know if you were here while I mentioned that point, we work with about 2,000 corporates. We've never ever experienced people coming back to us and say, oh, it's very expensive. Because if you actually look at the price range from the MRP standpoint, we started at the 335 rupee price range, or now at actually a 295 rupee price range, going up to 2,000 rupees. So practically there is something for everyone, provided you appreciate the quality that you, are trying to acquire for your company and so on and so forth. So I think we're very clear as a brand, we'll only play the quality and the innovation game and not the price game at all.
So you target the high end of the customer, or how is it? I know there are a lot of brands, in the market, competitors to you, and who have equally good brands, who are equally, like, if you talk about a brand coming from Balarpur Industries, it's a big brand. Thapar Industries, it is a big brand. I mean, and they have been visiting us, number of times for the orders, and that is where, you have to compromise somewhere, something.
So Ashish, sir, that's a very beautiful question. Ashish, let me ask you, sir, if I take the liberty of tweaking your question a little bit.
Yeah.
When we are looking at creating a brand, you're talking about creating a brand promise, brand personality, you're looking at creating a brand, positioning. They're all elements. So even the pricing will impact the kind of segment that you want to connect with. So is branding an exercise which is us in silo, Or are all the P's, whether 4, 5, whatever P's we are talking of, contribute towards creating a brand and its connect with the user?
So I think, see, brand is a very loose term that one can use. We are very clear as a company, we're very clear, a brand is made if your consumer is buying the product. As simple as that.
Absolutely.
As sir also mentioned, Bilarpur, there are multiple other brands. They're legacy brands. I mean, what they've created is something that we aspire to create one day, of course. We as a product company, first of all, stand for if the product mix that I'm giving to you. So all my raw material, including the thread that I use to bind my notebooks, is imported from Germany. You open the notebook, you hang on one side, your body weight will take. So the overall experience of that, from the raw materials that we create, we're a highly sustainable brand. There are no plastics used.
No, but then
it's all FSC certified. So that comes at a price.
In that case, your executives who are coming visiting us, do they ever mention that this is what the quality of our product is, or what we use? The others are not
So
using.
maybe, I mean, this can be a conversation that we can take it post the session.
Yep.
If you permit, because we'll have to move forward.
Yep.
Right, sir? But this is a very, what I like about these kind of questions is because it becomes very relatable to the audience sitting here. These are real questions, real challenges that everybody is facing. I'm taking a cue from there. Back here, sir, please. Taking a cue from this question, why don't each one of you share some story which is relatable to the audience that has helped you build the brand or the connect and create your D2C business? Let's begin with you, Ankit.
So, we are very clear, our salons is our physical interface, right? So let's say when Gurleen was talking about how, you're able to provide an experience and you do your hand massage and you do your skin testing. So our beauty salons or beauty parlors, as we used to call them, which are now called salons, are our physical stores where we are able to provide that experience, touch, feel of the product to the end consumer. And then taking that experience and being able to use that advocacy of that salon to promote something online is where our D2C strategy comes in play. So I think the beauty of playing in omni-channel, like even Ashish mentioned that, I think all brands today need to be omni-channel because there is always some pros and cons of every channel, and you need to be able to play with those pros and cons. So for anyone building a brand, and I'm assuming the audience is here to learn how to build their own brand or relatable things, I think it's important to be omni-channel so you can take the good from each channel, to offset the bad from each channel and basically create a complementing omni-channel strategy. So
I would want to add further to this only. 2-3 things which as a strategy or as a learning which overall as a company we have experienced and I've always thought of sharing with entire team and everyone who met us. First, in D2C we realized being agile is very important. You have to be very quick in terms of your decision making and in terms of listening to the inputs and thoughts of your users and plus the people who are bringing it onto the table, because D2C works in a very agile manner. What product you launch today basis your research of 6 months, maybe 3 months later your competitor already is out there. So
how did you learn this? Could some anecdote story about how did you learn this, that you need to be agile?
Yeah, so I think the latest development of agility is 6 months back we never thought a product like ours would be on Blinkit. We never thought. Now Blinkit is our equal runner of Amazon. So that's how Blinkit worked for us. Had we been very slow decision maker or very adamant, no, that I want to, Blinkit is Blinkit, then Zepto, and then Instamart. We are there all now.
Did this suggestion to put your product on Blinkit come from you as a leader, or did it come from any employee, or actually, how did you think about this?
Actually, I was not even knowing that we are on Blinkit. I was not knowing that team is already there. We already have a commercial agreed to them. 6 months our products were going, but at Rakhi it was a boom. We all were shocked to see a growth rate of 200% on just Blinkit. So our best seller product is Love Story collection, which is, more around
Love story on Raksha Bandhan. Imagine.
No, so as you rightly said, you would never, expect that Love Story, how can it sell on Rakhi? But we did wonderful numbers on Rakhi itself, because we understood that Love Story is not, the intimate relationship love story. It's always a brother-sister bond. It's your, Mother's Day, Father's Day, everywhere. Love Story worked as a very fantastic collection for us. Valentine Day on Blinkit, we did 16 lakhs plus. On Instamart, we did 16 lakhs plus just one day. So we were like surprised that, we never thought of having these numbers on these quick commerce. And again, as I said, you have to be open, because sometimes you are so busy with your strategies that, you forget about seeing around what the world is doing. And then, you are skeptical that, you want to do it or not. There were double thoughts that, our brand, who will buy our brand, luxury brand, as I mentioned, ki 999 ka shower gel, Amazon pe to hame bechne mein itne paise lagte hain, so who will, buy it on quick commerce. So, but again, these are all learnings. And as a second important takeaway is learn and unlearn, which our team has been very strong and very supportive. That they understand that yes, unlearning and then learning again is of a very crucial aspect in D2C to make it successful.
So, quick takeaway is that आपको सब कुछ पता नहीं है.
Yes.
You have to experiment. You
Yes.
don't know what's going to work. So as an entrepreneur, you need to be open-minded to go try stuff. Some things will work, some things may not work.
Yes.
But at least go with an open mind, try things out. Aditi, what has been your experience? Something that you would want to share about something that happened, a story about?
So rightly, I think what you said, just going into things with an open mind, I think that's been my approach to life all along. I think like I've literally just gone with the flow and life has taken me. So even with the brand, I feel, we launched as a D2C brand, as I said. And when we got the first restaurant coming to us, we were like, okay, like we are making good ceramics, we can do it for a restaurant as well. Then came another one, and now we are in more than 250 restaurants across the country, and we've even now made ceramics for Vikas Khanna's restaurant in New York, which has been our first international restaurant that we've serviced. So I just feel like, it's just been like we've listened to the customer, we've listened to people who've come to us, and now that itself has become a major part of our business. And that, like, as you have moved from B2B to D2C, we've sort of moved from D2C to B2B plus D2C, because now the B2B business is also helping us selling our products. Because if you see our communication on Instagram and our website, it highlights the kind of restaurants that we work with, the brands that we work with. So we work with all Bombay Canteens, tableware in Bombay is created by us, all their brands. Then Third Wave, we manufacture for Subco and other like leading, brands in the coffee industry. So now when a D2C customer is seeing that, oh, these people are working with such reputed brands, they sort of build a trust in our brand, and then that's how they'll end up purchasing the product from us. So I feel like, it's worked both ways for us. So I think
that's very beautiful, because, you build a brand in such a manner that even the B2B players want to put your brand as a mark of saying that, we are serving the best to our customers.
Just a point to that, recently we've actually had like cafe owners saying that, okay, if we buy from you, are you going to put up a post on your Instagram page? And for me, that is like a very big success story, that people want us to post about their cafe on our page. So awesome. I think that has been like a big success.
You have to learn from her one more thing, that when you're on the stage, do your plugins, market yourself, share your stories. Ashish, what has been your story? Something that you'd want to share with the audience here? Some anecdote or something that happened while you were transacting business or building this D2C business or a brand?
Overall, I can't think of any story per se as such, but again, fundamentals, right? 80% in any industry, 80% of the business will be done by 20% of the companies. Keep your eyes and ears open, build for scale, and build for the customers and their buying patterns. I think that's what the panel also summarized, right? She didn't think that she'll be able to sell on Blinkit. Same for me. I was with the Blinkit team recently, and now we're onboarding on multiple other platforms. They're telling me, one of the brands, without taking names, they're doing more business on Blinkit than they do on Amazon. and this is a mass brand, mass stationery brand, doing more business on Blinkit than they're doing on Amazon, with I think about 7 SKUs, and the SKU mix is 300 units on Amazon.
So this is very interesting. I'd like to end on this note because I'll share a story of what happened just about a week ago. My son at night at around 9:30 tells me that Papa ये ना स्कूल में लेके जाना है कल. I said देखो रात को 9:30 बजे याद आ रहा है कि ये स्कूल लेके जाना है, अब तो मार्केट बंद हो गई है, सब कुछ बंद हो गया है. And it was a product that I thought would not be available on Blinkit because the first thing that it comes to your mind is कि यार अंडे मिल जाते हैं, दूध मिल जाता है, ब्रेड मिल जाती है, ये कहाँ से मिलेगा? ठीक है ना? So you would, I mean, as a user, it does not even occur to your mind. But then he told me, he says, क्या हो गया? आप Blinkit कर लो ना या Zepto से मंगा लो, मिल जाएगा. And when I went on to Zepto and Blinkit, I found that product. It got delivered for my son to take it to school next morning. Sometimes we have to start looking at what the consumer needs, the environment in which the consumer is living in, the environment which is getting created for the next generation. And we have to align ourselves to serve them there. And I think, apart from positioning, availability and being present is extremely, extremely important. So be where your customer is, align with what their personality is, position your product and create a brand that not only resonates with your audience, but is a reflection of their personality, is what I understand of creating a D2C brand per se. I want to thank all of you for taking our time to be with us. Some of you have traveled from other cities. It's such a pleasure to have you here and listen to your insights. Thank you so much.